Okay, fingers crossed. No promises. It's a miracle that I have gone live as early as I have. I apologize for the slight delay for today. Wednesday, what is it? July 10th, 2024. And welcome to the weekly live stream here on the C47's channel. I'm Jem Schofield. Brandon, how you doing? Thaddeus, Sully, good to have you here. And just something that I will mention again in the episode a little later on for housekeeping purposes. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific. So same time, different day, 24 hours later, or just slightly less than 24 hours later by a couple of minutes, will be this month's episode of Camera and Flask. Unfortunately, last week I could not do, last week I did do an episode, but we couldn't do Camera and Flask because of a scheduling conflict. And then today is Ben's 25th wedding anniversary. So we're not touching that. And so we're doing it tomorrow, July 11th. So please come back for myself, Ben, Barden, and Caleb Pike, where we'll be talking about gear and production and all of that fun stuff, and probably talk about any new gear announcements. We had the ZV 10 Mark II come out today. Looks kind of interesting. I kind of have some initial thoughts on what I've seen with that. Sam, good to have you. And today we are going to be talking about last month's challenge, and we are going to be talking about this month's challenge, though I haven't chosen the prize yet. That's the part of this equation that I haven't, but there will be a first, second, and third place prize for the July B&H sponsored contest. Philip, good to have you here, and thanks for the shout out to Ben. So, as always with the weekly live stream, it's really about you. My God, the flies! It's summertime here. It's ridiculous. So we're gonna go over the contest stuff, and we'll talk about this month's contest, which will go till the last day of July. And I will shoot an episode of the Daily Drop as well, and that will cover that. Probably the last episode of this week. I just need to figure out the prizes, and then I'll do an episode. So that'll probably be Friday's episode. And then again, tomorrow we're going to do Camera and Flask at 3 o'clock. Okay, so as always, and at the C47, if you want to bring a topic up and you want to have a discussion about it. And I think that's about it. Just making sure that the world is still moving right along, barely. And what do we want to talk about today? We can start with the contest stuff and then get into conversations, or we can chat a little bit about gear and producing and production, and then we can get into that. Not a lot of submissions for the June contest, unfortunately. I was hoping for some more, but some interesting stuff, and I do have 3 that we are going to be going over, and I can talk about the prizes and all that fun stuff. So what do we got here? Because as you know, with the live streams, unlike recorded content like the Daily Drop, it's really all about you. It's about the chat, comments, reactions, all of that stuff. That's how this thing moves along. When we have those weeks where people are just sort of hanging there waiting for me to say something, and we're not interacting and getting conversations going, it moves slow. But when people start posting stuff and there's an at the C47 and you're asking questions and we start getting into stuff, that's when this stuff starts to cook. You know what I mean? So get to it. Brandon, of course, Petri is look at that. That was my reminder for contest winners. And by the hair of my chinny chin chin did I get everything put together for this. And yeah, okay. So what do we got? I want to see at least one at the C47. David, good to see you. Miss not having a submission from you. in June. Hopefully, you will be on board for the July contest. And what do we got? What are we talking about here, kids? This I keep making changes here in the studio, so I'm just looking around at that. Sully says, "Okay, here we go. Um, Close enough. Put a the in there in the future. I don't know who this at C47 is. Do you use a 3 camera or 2 camera setup for interviews?" Sully, for me, it's almost always. David's not going 2 for 2. David didn't submit anything in June, just so you know. Oh yeah, you tracking now with the never mind. Um, Back to Sully's question. So when I shoot interviews, almost always it's 2 cameras. It would be rare for me to have a third camera. It would be a luxury because one of the things that would be nice is to do an A camera, somebody looking either camera left or camera right, a B camera, usually a tighter shot, and then cutting between those two and whatever else is shot. If I added a third camera to an interview, I would probably do a long lens, and it would be for things like hands and like just sort of these little inserts that I could cut to, which is can be really nice sometimes. Can also work really well, especially for things like documentaries where people are fidgeting or things are happening. That's where I would add a third camera. But in most situations, it doesn't really make sense to have more than 2 cameras. It's also very rare for me to have um, just 1 camera for interviews, and there's been just some discussion over the last week or two from some of my posts about stuff. One of them was from an episode where I was talking about this pet peeve I have, where when you're doing when you're creating content and somebody's talking directly to camera like I am, and then you cut to a tighter shot usually, and the person in that B camera shot is looking off camera. To me, that doesn't connect and is a problem. And one of the things that a lot of people commented on was shooting in a higher resolution and then punching in, cropping into the image as you if you're doing 1 camera in order to get that other angle. Well, there's 2 things to think about when you're doing that in single camera. First of all, you want to make sure that you have enough resolution that when you punch in, you can get to the shot that you want, right? So you're going from, let's say, a medium shot, and you want to go to at some point or another a close up, sometimes even more. And this is when it starts to get into that part of the interview where you're digging in pretty deep into everything. And for me personally, the only thing to really consider when you're doing that is, well, 2 things. A, high enough resolution. So let's say you're shooting 6K. Usually you can punch in, if your shot's not too wide, to a tight enough shot for 4K delivery. Now, there are still people delivering in 1080 in full HD, 1920 by 1080. And obviously, if you're shooting in 4K, you have that. In order to do the same math in terms of cropping, if you want to deliver in 4K, you would actually have to capture in 8K. That would give you the same basically crop percentage when you are cropping in. So that kind of minimum for me, I think, is if you're going further than a 5 or 10% punch in from native 4K footage, which can work usually because if you've got a sharp image and it's holding, you should be able to do that. But if you're doing more than that, then I would say that you probably want at least a 5.9 or 6K native capture, so you can punch in, and you won't be able to punch in as much. But here's the rub on that. The one thing that people can forget at times is the reality of how optics work. So if you go from a wider shot to a much tighter shot, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, even if you're shooting at, let's say, a 2.8 and it's falling off on that shot, when you punch in, your depth of field isn't going to change. And it will visually be a little bit strange to the viewer if you punch in too much. So let's say you were shooting in we'll just take for giggles 4K, UHD 4K, so 3840 by 2160, and you're shooting that as your master. And then what you do is you punch in because your timeline's at 1080, and you let's say go to 200%. Well, when you punch into 200%, the problem is that your depth of field behind your subject matter isn't going to change, and that's going to feel a little strange. Obviously, if you're shooting green screen, it's a non-issue because you can kind of fake that. You can take your background and give it, more or less defocus or blur or out of focus elements. So when you're on the wider, it's a little less out of focus. When it's on the tighter cropped version, you're more out of focus. But you have to remember that when you're doing that overall. Um, also, I just did an episode about exposing for the background using ISO, and there was one person who made a comment that technically you're not letting in twice as much light when you're doing that. This is a separate thing. And it's a very valid comment. It was probably a poor choice of words on my part because technically all you're doing is gaining up, and that is not technically letting in twice as much light. But the end result is very similar, albeit depending on how high you go in ISO, the noise level that you're going to get. But if you change your ISO from 400 to 800, it's still going to be a stop. The visual effect of what's going to happen, as long as you're not seeing noticeable additional noise in the image, is a stop difference in terms of your light. So twice as much exposure is probably what I should have said, as opposed to twice as much light. So twice as much exposure or visible exposure. So there you go. All right, enough of that. Let's see what we got here. I was trying to submit some stock footage. And it got rejected. It says make sure your footage is 100 megabits or higher bit rate. Is that something to do with the SD card or I should use? No, AC. It really has to do with um, the format that you're capturing in. And each of those formats has either a variable or a constant bit rate when you are capturing. So it depends on the format that you are using. So and a format, your wrapper may be, let's just say, a QuickTime movie, but what's sitting inside of that? Is it H.264? Is it X AVC? Is it there's a million different options. Generally, not every camera, but generally most cameras will give you, or you can find a white paper from the manufacturer, a guideline in terms of what the data rate is for the footage that you're submitting. There's a little cheat here that I'm not normally going to recommend, but you could transcode the footage that you captured, especially if it's clean and visually what it needs to be. And you could basically transcode it into a codec, which effectively balloons or increases the size of the file and the data rate. It's a bit of a cheat. I don't know if it's something you should be doing all of the time, but if it's the difference between, as long as the quality is there in terms of the image, your stock footage being accepted or not, maybe it's something you want to consider. But SD card really has to do with what different variations, frame rates, resolutions, all of that stuff you can actually capture from a camera system. It doesn't really define the bit rate of your captured footage, though if your bit rate is too high, certain SD cards may not be able to record it. I hope that makes sense. What's the percentage of your clients requiring 4K delivery, or is this mostly just your default delivery resolution? Philip, it's the vast majority at this point because they want to see a 4K version of their video up on their YouTube channel. And I get that. I think that there's validity to that, especially because so many people are starting to push content from their devices to larger displays that are 4K. So it does make a lot of sense in many situations, especially at this point in time, to consider a 4K master as opposed to 1080. 1080 is fine, and it's still being used. And there are situations where I'll have a conversation with a client, and the decision is to go 1080, and that does happen. But by and large, at least for the work that I'm doing, most of it is UHD 4K, so 140 by 2160. Um, did I do that math right? I feel like I messed that up. Did I think I've just short circuited there. Yeah. I had the resolution right earlier, but sometimes, again, like when I was talking about ISO and exposure and stops and twice as much light, sometimes the choice of words isn't always perfect. Okay. So, have you tested the low light capabilities of the Canon C400? Not extensively, David. I had the camera for just a very short period of time. I am hoping to get another, at least pre-production model in at some point in the nearish future. We had it again for the Steadicam access videos I did, and we shot some footage on that, but none of that footage was low light, so I can't speak to that yet. Um, Brandon says, thinking of doing a series on the FX30. I don't know about a series. I mean, I think I've made it pretty clear that I think that this camera is a bit of a rock star, and they tend to, meaning Sony, put that camera on sale quite often. And when they do that, they usually drop it by a couple of $100. So when they do that, that camera is normally $17.98 US or around there, and they drop it down to $15.98. So you're getting um, about a $200 discount on the camera. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because while there are some interesting features in a camera like the ZV or ZV, is that what it's called? ZV-10 Mark II from Sony that got announced today. That camera is $1,000. That's the base. But if you watch videos like Gerald Undone's, you'll see that one of the big things that you're going to run into with that camera is the possibility of overheating. And even if the overheating doesn't happen immediately, it's a great reduction in terms of recording time in many environments when using the camera. So when you look at an FX30 for $1,600 US, I definitely wouldn't put the FX30 in it's one of the best hybrid cameras. But if you're looking for a digital cinema camera that can just be a workhorse in a lot of situations, and you don't want to spend a lot of money, FX30 is a pretty great way to go. The frustrations of using a camera that has a tendency to overheat is that you'll start to use that camera more and more. It'll start to leave a studio environment like this, a controlled environment. It'll go into an environment where it's warmer, there's more humidity, it's in direct sunlight, and that's when you're going to start to have issues with the camera, especially when you start to look at doing things like you will when you get out there and you start to overcrank and do off-speed recording at, let's say, 60 frames per second. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, at this point, Brandon, with the FX30, it's been on the market for a long time. I could do that. I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze when it comes to that camera, mainly because, again, it's been on the market for a long time, and I feel personally that there's a lot of content out there on the FX30. In some ways, I'd be more inclined, though I'm not going to do it, to do the A7C2, because that's a little rock star of a camera too. To me, it's the first kind of like entry level full frame camera where, if you're going the Sony route, you get the benefits of full frame Super 35. Unlike the FX3, you don't have to drop to 1080 when you go into a crop mode. So I think overall, and that has to do with the megapixel count of the sensor on the FX3, that would be the A7C2, a more logical camera to do something on, but it's also not in their Cine line. So I think what I'm probably going to do is wait until the FX30 Mark II or FX3 Mark II comes out, and then hopefully create some content similar to that Fuji H uh, HS. What? I'm reading what you're writing. X Fuji XH2S. Yes, yes. Okay. So there you go. All right. What else we got? Any other questions like that? This is good. I mean, this is how it flies. We're 20 minutes in, lots of good questions, just making sure nothing else has come in, like an email from Brandon, which is, highly likely for that to happen. I did not. There you go. Beautiful. Just making sure. All right. There you go. Okay. What do we got? I was just checking, making sure everything's moving forward. Any questions on any recent episodes of the Daily Drop or any other questions like the ones that you're asking? Just put in at the C47. I'd love to do this for another 5 or 10 minutes and then we can jump into some of the stuff. Come on, AC. That's ridiculous. Here we go. Let's see if it happens. Boom. Super chat, $10. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That was an assumption that you're a sir, but if you're not, I apologize. But thank you for the super chat and for supporting the channel and for being a subscriber, I'm assuming, and for watching this nonsense on a daily basis or whenever you do tune in. David says, what food did you make for the 4th? Well, my son's doing like a camp counselor thing this summer. So he's kind of on this internship. So during the afternoon, what we did is we went there and it was the traditional hamburgers, hot dogs, potato salad, coleslaw. So when we went home and we had a bunch of friends over, we decided to do something and flip the script completely, and we went predominantly Greek in terms of the feel, or we'll say Mediterranean. But then with some twists. So we had just gone a few days prior cherry picking. The area I'm in Oregon is fantastic in terms of produce and farming and things like that. So we went to a place where it was like $1.25, and they had 5 or 6 different varieties of cherries and amazing stuff. So we got 44 pounds of cherries. So we did a cherry crumble, but to bookend that at the beginning, what we did is I muddled a whole bunch of cherries and then also fresh limes. And then essentially what we did is cherry lime margaritas. Ridiculous. So simple syrup, fresh lime, fresh cherries, a little bit of 100% cherry juice that you can buy at a place like Trader Joe's here in the States. Um, and then we made like a concentrated mix of that with no ice at all, and then added basically a bottle of Reposado tequila. And then we would just put that over ice, and people could get either a sugar or a salt rim. So that was a drink. I made homemade hummus. I usually make it without tahini, partially because one of the people that we know is allergic to sesame, but partially because I like the taste. And that usually is chickpeas, of course, or garbanzo beans. And then the trick for me is I don't do the baking soda or any of that stuff. I just basically put it in warmer than room temperature water, and then I just go like this, and you take the skins off of it, and then it starts to, those little skins, the outer shell, whatever you want to call it. If you take those out, or at least the majority of them out, and then you save some of the liquid from the cans of the chickpeas. It's basically the chickpeas that are basically, what do you call it? Shelled, we'll call it that. A little bit of that liquid, lemon, fresh lemon juice, and then I do harissa. I don't mean the dried harissa, and then salt, pepper, olive oil. Yeah, I mean it's good. And then I also made 2 versions of a tzatziki. One, you got to use like the 5% Greek yogurt, Fage, the best. And then one of them had 1 serrano pepper. You could also use like a Thai chili in there. And then what I use is a potato peeler. This is ridiculous. I'm getting into this. A potato peeler. So you take the outer part of cucumber off, and then you peel until the actual seeds, and then take a little bit of the liquid out of that, and then you chop that up. You put that into the yogurt, lemon juice. In one of the two versions, of course, I did put in a, a chili pepper. The other one did not. And then it's about fresh herbs. So you do what you want to do, but if it's going to be tzatziki and raita are very similar in terms of what they are, and there are variations of those as well. But I was putting in this time oregano, fresh oregano, fresh mint, and a little bit of cilantro. And then you chop all of that up. And of course, you're going to take garlic and you smash it and you basically make it into a paste and you put it in there. So it's just inside of there, a couple of cloves of garlic in there, as long as you're not allergic or something. And then that's the tzatziki. And then one of our friends made chicken skewers, basically souvlaki, marinated in like a yogurt and lemon, and had fresh vegetables, like red onions and red peppers. We did an entire almost 7 pound boneless leg of lamb and just marinated that in the good stuff, lots of fresh herbs, a little bit of mustard, a little bit of red wine vinegar. You don't want to cook things, you don't want to marinate things in too much vinegar or citrus for too long. Certain things like meats can hold it, but if you do it too long, it changes the texture. What's up, the good Jeff? And well, so we had the lamb. We did a fresh watermelon and feta salad. That's super easy. You just basically cut up into cubes the watermelon and the feta cheese, and then it's a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, maybe, depending. And there you go. And what else? I don't know. We had a big Greek salad. There was plenty of food. Oh, shrimp. One of our friends made shrimp that was ridiculous. It's a good time. Music was playing. It was a good 4th of July. All right. That's funny, David. Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't even know if I want to talk about the Bear season 3. Okay. I don't know what's going on. I need like extended. The first episode I could live with the extended montage of food. And I love beautiful shots of food. Trust me, I'm obsessed with food. But I just feel like, come on, let's get in. All right. Brandon says 2 questions. Do you even make your own pizzas? What's been the industry temperature lately since the strikes? Wow, two questions on opposite sides of the spectrum. The answer to the first question is not only yes, but I'm doing it this weekend. So the first thing that I bought during COVID was an Uni Coda pizza oven. And that was the first of a disease of a flat top Blackstone flat top grill and a pellet smoker, and just forget about it. All right, that's a whole other conversation. But the answer is yes. And one of my friends is their birthday is tomorrow, so we're actually doing a pizza party on Sunday. So I just right before the live stream, which is ridiculous, Brandon, that you bring this up. I just ordered another 11-pound bag of 00 flour from Amazon, but it's Italian. And then I ordered yeast, and now my wife is deep into the sourdough game, and so she has a starter always. So we're gonna, on Friday for Sunday, we're gonna make the dough. Big, pretty high hydration. It'll probably be a pretty wet dough, and then we're gonna basically cold ferment that for 2 days. So it should have a lot of flavor by Sunday. So that'll be the dough, and then and I've done it before. And then the sauce is super super easy. No, the yeast I use, I usually use a dry yeast. Oh, I can't look it up here, but there's another yeast my wife's using for the bread. I can't remember what it's called, and it's not a cake yeast though, I don't believe. But then the sauce, Di Napoli, not Napoli, Di Napoli, um, whole canned tomatoes. I think taste better than most of the San Marzano ones that I have had. They come out of California. I buy them in a 6 pack off of Amazon. It's about $30 for 6 cans, the big cans. And I don't spin dough. It's all this. I mean, I can't. I've done it a couple of times, but I can't do that stuff, especially with that high hydration. But once you get the gluten content going, that's how you can start to flip it. When it's really structurally like a New York City or New York dough is great for that. It's usually a combination of a couple of flours, and it ferments, and it just has lots of structure. Okay, so back to the sauce. So what you do is you take the Di Napoli tomatoes. I never cook my sauce for pizza. And then that goes into a blender with fresh basil, um, garlic. Usually what I'll do is I'll put the garlic under a wet paper towel in the microwave for like 15 or 20 seconds. It just takes a little bit of the edge out of it. You don't have to do it. Obviously, you could do roasted as well. Um, really good olive oil, salt, Bob's your uncle. That's it. That is the sauce. You got to get the ratios right, but that flavor. And then I usually, secret, put a little bit of crushed red pepper in there. A big fan of crushed red pepper. All right, so there you go. And then, of course, you want a couple other secrets? We're here, right? We're sharing. Um, Fresh mozzarella, but also whole milk mozzarella, like a block of it, the kind of dried kind. So it's usually a combination of those two I like to use. You don't have to if I'm doing more traditional sort of Neapolitan style. Um, then I'm just going to use fresh mozz. But if oftentimes, and here's the secret, okay? Yes, you can finish with Parmigiano Reggiano or Pecorino Romano, but the secret is try making a pizza with Manchego cheese. Shred it really finely and put that on the pizza. Ridiculous. Okay. Calabrian chili oil. I'm a huge fan. Like my pizza is not a just a plain cheese pizza. My pizza is Italian sausage and mushrooms. Is like that's the way to go. I love banana peppers. I love all of that stuff. All right, I'm done with this. The There's positivity for question number 2 about the strikes ending. We're, I think, pretty close to that for the IATSE stuff. So I think there's generally a good positive attitude. When everybody gets back to work will remain to be seen, especially people who are union. It's not that they can't work right now, but they're kind of waiting. When you're doing a big show, episodic or feature, it's a lot, right? You've seen these credits roll. And so if you green light a project and then you start doing it, it can be expensive. So if they go on strike, so that's why people wait. All right, that's what I got for you. We're gonna get through it. Let's do the challenge, shall we? Are we ready? Yeah, nothing beats roasted garlic, by the way, Brandon. But that little trick in the microwave, just a few seconds, just to take the edge off, it's also what I do when I make pesto. So a pesto is fantastic with a roasted garlic. You cut the top off, little salt, little olive oil, stick it in the oven for about 45 minutes, and it starts to get all lovely, squeeze all the garlic out. That's a great flavor. It's really delicious. But if I'm just making a quick pesto, it's going to be good quality olive oil. Most of the time it's pine or pinoli nuts, though it can, and I like the roasted kind. If they're just raw, then take a little bit of salt, take them in a frying pan, and just give them a little color. It releases some of the oils and the flavor of them. So good olive oil. You're going to get pine or pinoli nuts. You're going to add you're going to add a lot of basil. It doesn't have to be basil though. Rocket or arugula, same thing, is delicious for pestos. And in fact, because baby arugula or rocket is very peppery in taste, it can be a great addition even if you're making a traditional pesto with pine nuts and basil, which of course you don't have to. You can make pestos with walnuts. I've had in Italy. Um, you know, Sky's the limit. And then, of course, really good quality cheese. Pecorino Romano is a cheese I have a strong affinity for. I like the brightness of it in dishes. And then, of course, salt, pepper, the normal stuff. You get the idea. All right, now I'm really getting. We do grow our own. We have some basil right now. It's not uh, in abundance. We have more mint than I can tell you what to do with. We have tons of rosemary. We have tons of fresh oregano. We do have cilantro and basil planted. I use those two herbs all of the time. um, we don't really have any flat leaf Italian parsley, and that is also an ingredient that I use all of the time. And very oftentimes, I'll use flat leaf Italian parsley along with cilantro. If I'm making something like a chimichurri, I like the combinations of those. I also like putting fresh cilantro, though it's not for everybody, into dishes. It gives it a little bit of a brightness and stuff. Um, Another spice that you might want to try is sumac. Has a very like bright citrusy flavor. If you want to play around with spices and stuff like that, sumac might be one that you want to try. Wow, don't get me started on food. I'm getting hungry now. Tonight's going to be simple. Just a salad and maybe some smash burgers or maybe bigger burgers. I've been on a smash burger tear, but mainly I've been on a perfecting the Okie or Oklahoma burger, which I've mentioned before. Which ideally you're using a mandolin and you're taking an onion, um, like a sweet onion or a white onion, and you're very very paper thin slicing that. So you just create lots of that, and then what you do is you put down the patty after it's seasoned. For me, it's very simple. It's kosher salt, it's pepper, it's a little bit of garlic powder, usually only on one side, and then I'll salt it on the other side. Um, After it's down on the flat top or in a cast iron pan. And then you take a big ass pile of the onions and you put it on top of that burger. And that's going to create moisture and a little bit of steam and stuff like that. And then you just press the heck out of that, put a little salt on it. And then when one side is done, you flip it, press it down, and then pretty much almost immediately, 30 seconds later, you put down your cheese if you're going to cheese it. Put a little lid on there, put a little water on the flat top, there you go. Honestly, Brandon, I mean, if I'm on a desert island, I do love a good steak, but I think a cheeseburger wins. It's a tough one. Cheeseburger or pizza. God damn, both of those are such good things to eat. Not for you, but they taste so delicious. I don't know. I like a lot of things, as you know. Just don't give me pumpkin pie, eggplant, or Stilton/blue cheese. Nice, David. All right. Any other comments here? Any other questions? All right, here we go. Let's get into this challenge. Okay. Let's see if the Stream Deck and Ecamm is behaving itself. It is. Okay, so this is one of two uh, inspiration frames for the June 2024 B&H challenge. And this is from a movie called Last Summer, which I've never seen, but I went to Shot Deck and I was looking for frames that I thought would be interesting. And then another film called Call Me By Your Name. Um, Everybody let me know that you're seeing these frames. I just want to make sure that they're clean and that you're seeing what's here. And these are just from two movies, both from about the last 10 years. And there's some similarities in terms of composition, right? They're not identical, but these were the reference frames. And as I said before, I really wanted more submissions. There were very few. We're going to start the new challenge today, and there will be a little bit more time every month. There's going to be more time, but the idea was to take these two frames and use them as inspiration for images that you're going to create. So we only had ridiculously 3 submissions, which is kind of crazy. I don't know what's going on here. Whoa, I don't see any image. Neither do you. Hello? Hello? Come on. Oh, now you see that. Now you see that. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, wait, maybe this. I don't know what's happening with the good old. I know how to do this. Are you ready, guys? Something is happening that is really strange, and I will get to this frame. Give me a second, everybody. Hopefully, yeah, there you go. Strange. So I have on my Stream Deck here that wide shot. For some reason, it's not jumping to that. I've done a few updates to Stream Deck, and there you go. And then you saw some of that stuff that I'm setting up for B&H for some affiliate stuff. All right, so let's get back into this. So those are our two reference frames, and we only had 3 submissions, which is ridiculous. And one of them came in late, Brandon, but I'm giving him a pass. It was about a day off in terms of when he took the image from the deadline. And I'm doing 2 things with Brandon's images. First of all, calling you out a little bit because your image is not necessarily inspired by these 2 reference images. So I don't know what was going on with that, Brandon. I would like to see an explanation in the comments about why, if that's cool. Tell me what the deal was with that. But basically, I still feel that there was something there. And I'll talk to you. I'm going to go back to Brandon's after I go through it. But third prize, which are 2 light stands. Yeah. Now, Brit's here. Okay. There you go. I'm calling you out. I mean, here we go. Let's see what Brandon said. So sorry for the late submission due to us leaving for our trip later than expected. Location is an abandoned gas station in Winslow, Arizona, which is home to Meteor Crater, or quote unquote Meteor City, which inspired the movie Asteroid City. It was difficult to find a frame from the movie that would be easily reproducible since we were only driving through on our way to Oklahoma. We found this gas station service window, which reminded me of the dialogue scene between Augie and Midge. Um, you do choose your own frame, sort of, Brandon, but it's based, you make your own frame inspired by that. I'm glad you watched the 2 episodes that I did on this in full to understand what the challenge was, you crazy dude. All right, here we go. So let's keep going. That is the gas station slash cafe, which was the inspiration for Brandon and Britt on this. And let's go ahead and take a look at the inspiration frames from the film itself, from Asteroid City. So there's 1 for female, there's 2 for male, and then here is the result of those inspiration frames. Brandon taking it into, and Britt taking it into their own hands here. And there we have Britt, and boom, there we have Brandon. So I think pretty damn cool. I like it. I'm digging it. And if these were the inspired frames, you probably do better than third place here. But, come on, kid. I'm just telling you like it is. But I think pretty dang cool. So that's third prize. And Britt, you were there. What do you mean, come on, Brandon? What are you talking about? Yeah. All right. So that is the third prize. And just sort of sliding in there. And there's a thought process here about sliding Brandon into third place, besides the fact that I thought what he did was cool and stuff like that. And I'm letting it go in terms of it being late. I think you can do better. And I don't mean on the frames themselves. I really like the images and what you did in terms of composition and color and being inspired by those. But I think you can go another level. That's my feeling. All right. So that's number 1. We are now going woohoo, light stands. Yeah, it's not that exciting, but what are you going to do? But again, I'm just going to go through this again, and then we'll revisit these in a minute. But here's everybody so you can see. Boom. And then boom. All right, great. So now we're going over to Daniel Murphy. This is what Daniel said. I edited this just a little bit. There were a few extra pieces here, but this was shot with a Canon 6D with a 24 mil at around 100 in terms of shutter speed at ISO 100, so outdoors, and a range of between f5 and an f9, so a 5.9, maybe a split sometimes, as I recall. I thought about what would make a great summer photo and immediately thought of the basketball court down the street from where I live. There's always a game going on there during the golden hour, no matter how hot it is. I asked the young players if I could take their photos and they kindly obliged. I put in the they. In the edits, I wanted to capture the vintage film look as shown in the shot deck sample, so I went for high contrast with slightly lifted blacks. The color is shifted to combine a bit uh, I'll say of warmth with a slight green midtones. I added a bit of grain and crop to a 2:3:9 aspect ratio to give it a cinemascope film touch. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at these. There's 3 images we can look at from Daniel. This one right here, I love these photos. They're obviously slightly different compositionally from the original inspiration frames, but there's different inspiration coming into Daniel's images here. So there's the second image, and here's the third image, which probably of the 3 in terms of composition kind of echoes the inspiration frames a little bit more. I think super cool. Totally digging these images here from Daniel, and I really appreciate you taking the time to go and do this. Um, what does that mean? Well, not only are they cool, but second prize. So this is a rolling, uh, basically C-stand case that you can use, and that will also be provided by B&H. I will say right now, um, if Daniel and the next person aren't here on the stream, I'll have to reach out. And the same for you, Brandon. I need you to send me an email to challenge at the c47.com with your contact information, including your full address and your phone number, so that B&H can actually ship that out. There you go. That's what I got for you. So again, let's go ahead and take a look at that. There's that first shot. Second shot. Boom. And this one. And this kind of reminds me of growing up, even though this is in Wichita, Kansas. This kind of reminds me of growing up in New York. Just hot summer days, kids playing ball. My son's a big basketball player. Um, and he is a lot taller than everybody else in our family, at least on my wife and I's side. All right, we've got our last one. You guys ready for this? Straightforward, and boom, this is Charlie Clark. I'm Charlie, and I work as a professional photographer in the Army, currently stationed at Wheeler Army Airfield in Oahu. I said that right, right? Hawaii. Here's a photo I snagged today, June 18th, right under the wire, unlike Brandon and Britt. Just saying. Doing a Rappel Master final exam at the Lightning Academy here on Oahu. I love your channel and everything you're putting out. Please keep it up. Thank you for the kind words. P.S. If you're ever in Oahu and want to check out the helicopters here, just hit me up and I'll get you on the airfield. Nice. Specialist Charlie Clark, 25th Combat Aviation Brigade. Thank you for your service, first of all, Charlie, and thank you for the submission. This is, if we've got 3 submissions and I've done a third, a second, and now a first prize, and here's the image. Boom, there it is. Looks to be a 3:2 aspect ratio, and very, very much inspired by the reference images from those films, and pretty cool photograph. Lots going on. Really love that left eye is peeking out of the visor in the image. I think that is super cool. I love that we're feeling like full exposure on the sky and the field in front of him there, and just, very little, but very like very little going on, but there's a lot going on. And I love photographs like that. And then compositionally, just very well composed. And it'd be really interesting if you saw this same image flipped, where the person, our subject matter, was in the foreground, but on the left side of frame. Um, it would just feel different. So you get the idea. So Charlie, you win this month. All right. So you guys ready to hear about my little idea here? It's pretty simple, actually. And this is Brandon, why, and Britt, you're in this as well. This is kind of why you're getting a little bit of we'll call it a free pass here. Not because you didn't put any work in, but there you go. Here we go. You see this frame from Asteroid City? You see this frame from Asteroid City? These two frames are going to be our inspiration frames for July's contest. And again, there will be a first, second, and third prize winner. And this, along with this, are inspiration frames. I do have some things to say about that, though. And number one, Brandon, you can't submit the same photographs. So what you're going to have to do in July is, for the next, what do you have, 21 days? You're going to have to create images that are not duplicates of the images that are being used as the inspired frames. What you're going to have to do is you are going to have to create something that is definitely inspired by that, but has a totally different look and feel. Yeah. That's what happens. Sort of like I'm giving you props, but you're getting slightly reprimanded for not doing it on time, and sort of not watching the episodes in terms of what we're trying to do. So we'll do one more month, maybe more, of inspired frames. And you're not going back there, Britt and Brandon. You're going to do this somewhere else. It's inspired frames. But very cool stuff, and I really appreciate it. What I'd love to do is get more people, David, Philip. Who else do we have here? Thaddeus, I'm waiting for something from you. And good Jeff, I'm looking here. We got people. AC underscore AC underscore. I'm expecting Sully. Come on, let's go. Get out there. You got about 3 weeks, and there you go. Yeah. See, I knew Britt was not down for that. You already made Britt drive all the way up to the Pacific Northwest from Arizona. And I'm sure you guys had a great trip, but that's a heck of a drive. So maybe local. Maybe you go to Scottsdale. It's not as if you don't have desert and stuff like that around you. So there you go. Yeah, these are individual submissions. So last time, both you and Britt submitted photos, Brandon. I don't mean in June, I mean in May. And you can do the same. It's each individual who's submitting their images. Are you trying to increase your chances? I don't know. There you go. Philip's in, but I'm not going to drive out to Winslow. Heck no. And I don't think most of us are. But those are our reference frames or inspiration frames for the July contest. I will, I guess, shoot an episode tomorrow for Friday, which announces the contest. And then also, there you go. So Britt is asking, when you say inspired by, can we choose any frame or those specific photos? So the answer to that question, Britt, is you are picking, you're not picking. You're using these two frames as your inspiration frames. And I know you've already done this, but that means that you have to be extra creative because you don't have to duplicate what they are. I mean, a good example of that is Daniel's photographs of the kids playing basketball on the court. He didn't compose the shot to duplicate the inspired frames from those two movies. Um, you know, so he wasn't using this and this as the inspiration for composition. What he was doing was pulling elements of what he saw there to inspire his photographs. And we wound up with images that sort of were pushed in maybe similar color palette, areas and stuff like that. Composition wasn't identical. Um, but there was definitely a vibe, right? So, yeah, there you go. So hopefully that answers that. If you need to clarify that or you want me to give you more information on it, just let me know right now. And again, I'm assuming that Daniel Murphy and Charlie Clark are not here on this live stream. Hopefully they will watch it on the replay. If you do, then just send in your contact information to challenge at the c47.com, same place that you sent your entries or submissions for the frames. And you have until the end of day, July 31st, to submit your inspired frames based on those two images from Asteroid City. Speaking of Wes Anderson, it's really interesting. You watch Grand Budapest Hotel, which is a movie that I very much like, and then you go back if you've seen it prior to, and go back to Bottle Rocket. It's really interesting to see sort of the seeds of Wes Anderson in that movie, though it is shot more traditionally in terms of the way the movie looks. There are definite elements there which you're sort of in pinnacle mode on Grand Budapest. It's sort of like this progression each movie, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Did you have an Okie burger in Oklahoma, or was it all just fishing, Brandon? What's the deal? Want to know. All right, kids. This is where we wrap things up. 3:58 p.m. Pacific time, which means that I've got to edit today's episode of the Daily Drop. My stomach just rumbled. I don't know if you heard that, but that probably means when I'm done doing that, it's time to make some Okie burgers. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Well, again, I really appreciate everybody coming to the weekly live streams. For housekeeping purposes, again, tomorrow, back-to-back live streams, 3 p.m. Pacific, Camera Flask with myself, Ben Barden, Caleb Pike. We're going to be chatting it up. Hope to see most or all of you then. Tell your friends. Let them know about the channel. We're doing stuff here. At least I am. Hopefully, the education side is working, and I know it's different every single day, 5 days a week, but that's kind of the intention. I have some backlog stuff that I want to show you guys. A couple of things, including this Cine Rag bleached and unbleached muslin modifiers I'm using in these big 150 centimeter soft boxes. Stuff from Metcalf Noodles, which are great little pieces of kit to have in your bag. A few other things. I've got work to do. All right, kids. Let me know. This is when we end this thing. I say sayonara and finish on the Ecamm Live. I'll see you, everybody. All the best. Maybe.